Are you tired of using low-quality bags to pick up after your dog? Do you get dog poop all over your hand when cleaning up their mess? What you need is a mutt mitt, a strong 2-ply bag that makes it super-duper easy and hygienic to pick up your dog's waste. Check it out on muttmittsireland.ie. Mutt mitts, better than a bag. Proud sponsor of the Big Bark podcast.
It's the Big Bark with the latest of the canines. The Big Bark, all the doggiest of headlines. With your hosts Dara, Millie, Roxy and Bruno. They're the kind of dogs that you know.
It's time to talk about health, nutrition, training. Talk with canine professionals, owners and dogs.
It's the Big Bark, the Big Bark. All the canine stories for you.
And hello, and you're very welcome back to the Big Bark podcast, and I am your human host, Dara Burke, and I'm joined, as always, by my canine co-hosts, Bruno, Roxy and Millie, who are, if I had a camera, I'd show you, all sound asleep. They do this thing in the morning, they have this like morning nap that they seem to have nearly every morning after breakfast. After they go and do the business and everything, they come back in and they fall asleep. And all three of them are sound asleep here on the floor, which means that I will actually get this recorded without any barking or any noise. Now, okay, what have we got coming up on the show today? Well, first off, it's been 2 weeks since we were on. Apologies for that. I had a few technical issues last week, so couldn't really make it last week. And well, okay, this week we have, later on coming up, we have Dr. Ashleigh Bugler from Tree Vets coming on to talk to us on the Health Hub, all about parasites and, I suppose, mites and ticks and how to prevent them. And she's going to be chatting to us a bit later on, all about that. We also have Samantha Rawson from the Canine College. Samantha is going to be talking to us all about holiday preparation and the things that you need to consider if you're taking a doggy away on holidays. So, as you can guess, we're, I suppose, a real summer kind of feel to this, because we haven't exactly had a summer all summer. But this month, well, today we're going to talk a lot about the summer. And Roxy, I suppose, Bruno and Millie, they all love going off onto the field. They love being out and about. And we have a few, I suppose, Shetland ponies. There are 2 Shetland ponies and 2 foals that are staying outside in our field at the moment, outside grazing. And Roxy, I was actually very concerned at first, but when I saw Roxy run into him, I was like, oh my God, she's going to get a kick in the face. Oh, Jesus, they're going to kick her. But it was actually really cool, because Roxy went up to the white little foal that's there and went right up to the foal's nose, and the two of them were just like butting noses together. And I swear I wish I got on camera, because it was one of the cutest things that I've ever seen before. And well, like, yeah, it was like just so cute. But she's been getting up to loads of devilment with the horses being there. Unfortunately, Roxy has dirty habits as well. And I'm wondering if there's anyone else out there who has a little small dog, or any kind of dog at all, that likes to go out and pick up shite. A big pile, walking into the house there one day last week, a big pile of horse shite she walked in with, a big lump of it in her mouth. And yeah, Roxy has these dirty old habits. So don't you, Roxy? She's actually kind of waking up now, and she's getting a bit hyper with her little donkey teddy there. I think this is why she likes the horses so much, because she seems to love this donkey teddy, and like just chewing it up. And then she sees in real life what she thinks is a donkey, but she doesn't realise that they can kick her. We'll take a break this week from the, I suppose, the mental health segment. We will have that back in, I suppose, a week or two. We're just trying to line up a few more people for that. So we're going to have that coming back up in the next couple of weeks. And in the meantime, I suppose it's going to be a short enough show today. It's not going to be that long. Not as long as our previous shows. So our last show was, I think, an hour and a half. Our last episode was. So this is going to be probably around the 40-minute mark. And that way then I can go off this morning and take our lovely doggies walkies. So we're actually, with that being said, let's move on to our first segment, and that is with Ashleigh Bugler from Tree Vets in Limerick and Shannon. So, yeah, this actually was just something that was recorded earlier this morning. So, I'll be right back to you. You can listen in, and I'll be back to you after this.
You have a pet in need of a vet, or do you need some health advice for your four-legged friend? Whether it's for a regular checkup, microchipping, vaccinations, or critical urgent care, you can rest assured knowing that your pet is in loving hands at Treaty Veterinary Clinic, Limerick and Shannon. Providing care for your pet since 1986, at Treaty Vets, your pet is our priority. Call our 24-hour number 061 328 511 or make an appointment through our website www.treatyveterinaryclinic.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram, Treaty Veterinary Clinic, proud sponsors of the Health Hub on the Big Bark.
And we're back on the Health Hub again this week with Ashleigh from Treaty Vets. Ashleigh, big welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Sarah. It's great to be on again.
We all know about like the ticks and fleas and mites. So I suppose there are people out there who don't know much about them, who might be a first-time dog owner, for example. So today we're going to talk about parasites in dogs.
Great. So yeah, parasites are very common in dogs. So I think there's two main families of parasites. You have your internal parasites and you have your external parasites. So the external parasites are the ones you were mentioning, Dara, your fleas, your ticks, your mites. But then we also have internal parasites. So I might start with those internal parasites. In Ireland, it's different around the world, but in Ireland, we have roundworms, hookworms, whipworms, tapeworms, and lungworms. So all these parasites can live inside your dog's body, and you won't see them, and you might not even see any signs of them. So like roundworms, they live in the small intestine. The eggs are passed out in the feces. Dogs become infected by. The eggs are very strong. They're very resilient. They live in the environment. Dogs can become infected kind of eating undercooked meat or small mammals, or even just from kind of poor hygiene. So, and then the puppies can get them through their mother's milk or in the uterus, through the placenta. So a lot of puppies are born with these worms, so we need to treat them from early on in life. And these roundworms affect all dogs, and all dogs should be wormed 4 times a year. When you worm your dog, it isn't long lasting. So when you worm your dog with a worming tablet, it kind of kills the worms that are there. But if there's eggs or, they can get reinfected. So it's important to worm your dog at least 4 times a year. Kind of newer studies coming out now, especially if you're in a household where there's children that might be playing kind of with your dogs, or if you have a lot of dogs, say in a household, they're kind of saying, actually, we should probably consider worming our dogs every month. Because as I said, it's just killing the worms that are there. It's not preventing worms. So if you want to make sure your dog isn't shedding eggs or worms in the environment, it's, or if you've got young children, or if you're just you want to be very careful about this, you worm your dog every month. We do know, like the roundworms, they are zoonotic, and that means they can pass to humans. So if you want to be very sure that you're not, if you want to be very careful, there's going to be more studies coming up on this all the time. We don't really know enough about it, but we do know that roundworms, they're very, very resilient in the environment. They do pass to humans. So at the very minimum, you want to worm your dog 4 times a year. And if you want to be very careful, you can worm your dog every month. There's no problem with overworming. As I said, it just kills what's there. There's no preventative effect. So hookworm then is very similar to roundworms, but that can cause bloody diarrhea. They kind of bite into the wall of your gut, and that can cause bloody diarrhea. But the treatment is the same, kind of worm your dog 4 times a year. Whipworm, again, very common, up to 10% in dogs of Ireland, but of dogs in Ireland will have whipworm. That lives in the cecum. It's kind of between where your small intestine and the large intestine meet. Again, very common. Tapeworm is a very common one. And tapeworm is kind of important to remember because it's involved with the flea. They help each other. So the flea and the lice, they're intermediate hosts. So the feces, the segments of the tapeworm are passed in the feces, and then the fleas or the lice, they eat those segments. And then the dogs ingest the fleas or the lice when they're licking themselves, and then they get infected with tapeworm. So it's a very common one again, and it's one that a lot of the kind of over-the-counter worming products don't cover. Or it's the spot-ons. A lot of the spot-ons that people are buying over the counter, they don't cover for tapeworm a lot of the time. So and it's so common, and so it's not a nice worm at all. Sometimes we even see the little segments on the dog's bum where they're coming out in the feces. So definitely want to make sure you're giving a good worming tablet 4 times a year to kind of treat for tapeworm. And then I suppose one worm that we're seeing more and more of, and one that's very, genuinely very dangerous for dogs, is lungworm. So lungworm, they get this from eating kind of slugs or frogs or mice or rats that are infected with it, or the slime kind of, we know in Ireland, I know myself, a lot of food bowls out in the yard or whatever, the slugs and the snails, they go all over it, and you'll see the trail of slime. That slime can be infected with lungworm. And if your dogs are licking or eating out of dirty water bowls or food bowls, they can ingest the parasite through that slime. So very important that we're kind of keeping up to our hygiene and keeping that mindful. But the problem with lungworm is it's obviously in the lungs, can cause things like coughing, exercise intolerance, panting, difficulty breathing. But it's not just that. It can cause a problem with clotting. So it can cause the dog not to be able to clot blood properly. And obviously that is very dangerous. You can see bleeding and bruising and things like that. So in endemic areas, in areas where lungworm is very common in certain parts of the country, we've been advising to worm your dog monthly to prevent against that. But again, kind of around where we are, Limerick, 4 times a year should be fine, unless we've got a kind of a high index of suspicion, maybe a working dog or something like that. And I suppose then that's kind of a lot of the internal worms. I mean, heartworm is kind of mentioned a lot, but it's actually not currently in Ireland. But obviously, if you're taking your dog, abroad in a camper van or with you over to France in your car, it's very common in France, Spain, Italy, kind of the Mediterranean. So Irish dogs that are travelling abroad would be at risk of it. So making sure, again, regular worming treatment. And then the only other kind of main one I want to point out is a thing called Giardia. So that's a microscopic parasite. It kind of embeds itself in the lining of the gut. It's very common. You'll find it in every county in Ireland. Very, very common. Puppies in particular can be prone to it. And it can cause bad diarrhea and weight loss, poor thriving, things like that. And your regular worming tablet that you're giving kind of regularly won't treat for that. So we do often test for it. We send away a fecal sample to test for it to see, do we have a problem with Giardia? Because you kind of need 3 to 5 days of a particular worming treatment to treat for that, because of kind of the way it's embedded in the gut wall. It takes a bit longer to kind of treat it. So they're kind of the main internal parasites, I suppose. And then I suppose what you were saying, Dara, kind of the external parasites, then I suppose, like you said, a lot of people know about them. So you have your fleas, your ticks and your mites. And they're the most common. So, I mean, ticks, there's about 900 species all around the world. We kind of have 2 main species in Ireland, and then one in particular, the Ixodes rhynchus, it's called. It is quite common. I mean, we see ticks all the time. And it's, as you said, it's in long grass. People going walking in fields or up the hills. It's very, very common, even on yourself. Make sure you're always checking your own legs to see, have you got any friends coming home with you? But with the problem with dogs, I suppose, especially kind of dark coloured dogs or any dogs with long hair, we won't see these ticks. They're tiny when they latch on, and it's only when they bite and they fill up with blood that we then see them. So again, with ticks, it really is prevention is better. We do have to, I was saying about the worming, it's kind of just, you're treating it. Whereas with fleas, ticks and mites, we can actually prevent these things. So we have a product that we have kind of, there's 2 main products. So the first one is you give your dog you can use it in adult dogs, and you give it every 3 months, and it will prevent fleas, ticks and mites for those 3 months. So the tick will bite and then it will fall off once it's bitten. And it doesn't give it enough time to transmit any diseases. So obviously a lot of people will have heard of Lyme disease and stuff like that. Ticks can transmit diseases. The most common kind of thing is that it'll just cause a fever. So a high temperature, and then, a kind of a viral illness. But you don't want that for your dog. So very important that we prevent the ticks. So you just give this product 4 times a year. Same as your worming, we kind of try and make it easy for people. You give your worming tablet and your kind of, your external parasite tablet. You give them together and then you're done. 4 times a year, you treat your pet for parasites. So with the ticks particularly, I think that's really important, because then you can rest easy. You can go for your walks, go in long grass. You don't need to be checking your dog every day. If you don't want to prevent these things, if you don't want to treat, give these tablets to your dog, then you need to be checking your dog after every single walk, checking all their legs, under their arms, behind their ears, every single place you can think of around their bum where ticks might latch on, because you'll have to physically remove them. So kind of the trick with ticks is to kind of twist them anti-clockwise. Because when they bite in, they kind of latch on, and you kind of have to twist them anti-clockwise to get them off. But it's not easy. So, and if you can break them off and leave the little head in the skin. So if you think you're not going to be able to do it, just call in and we'll do it for you. Because you can buy little tools as well that helps. They kind of latch on to the tick, and you can twist the little handle of it, and it helps to remove them. So if you want to go down that road, absolutely go for it. But you just need to be very, very vigilant. And then I suppose fleas, everyone I suppose knows about fleas. They're very crafty. They're very, very clever. I suppose the main thing that I kind of find people don't understand is that fleas, they actually, 90% of them will be living off the host. So if your dog has fleas and you see the odd flea on your dog, like 90% of those fleas are living in your house. So they're kind of in the floorboards, they're in the couch, they're in the bed. So not alone, if your dog does get fleas, again, it's preventable by giving this tablet 4 times a year, or there's monthly products available too. You can give, and even like most of the over-the-counter spot-ons, they do prevent fleas too. So like there's kind of, fleas are very preventable. But if your dog does get fleas, it can take up to 12 weeks to get rid of them. And it's not just about treating the dog, it's about treating the house as well. So you often have to kind of hot wash all the bedding, all the cushion covers, all that kind of thing. And then a special spray that you spray around the house to kill the fleas that are not on the dog, and the eggs, kind of stop the eggs from hatching. So fleas, I suppose with fleas, again, it's prevention, you know. If your dog has a flea infestation, they're very uncomfortable, they're itching, they're over grooming, and the fleas will bite the humans too. So we have some people come in and they have flea bites, and that's kind of often the first sign that their dog is carrying a little passenger. So again, prevention. They're hard to get rid of. It's at least 12 weeks of treatment and kind of treating the house and everything. And they're not inert, like they cause infections and stuff, and the flea bites, your dog will be over grooming, can cause skin infections and things like that. So very important to prevent fleas. They are easy preventable. So that's an important thing to do, really, for the welfare of your dog. And then the other main one, I suppose, is mites. So people might have heard of scabies or mange. That's kind of their kind of names we call them. But there's kind of 2 main types of mites. So there's the Demodex mite, and then there is the Sarcoptes mite. So the Sarcoptes mite is the one from mange, the scabies mite. We often see that in dogs that maybe that don't have the best immune system, or kind of aren't. It's common in dogs that maybe have come from a poorer background. So maybe that have gotten lost and they've been on their own for a while, or they've just come from a poor breeding situation, perhaps. And that it's an awful mite. It really, really damages the skin barrier. Because it's intensely itchy and can set up a huge infection in the skin, and can be hard. It can be hard to prove that it's there. We have to do tests to prove that it's there, skin scrapes, and you won't always find it, but you'll often have a high index of suspicion that it's there. And treatment, again, is kind of there's a couple of different ways to treat it, but often it's kind of treating it topically every 2 weeks. There's shampoos, there's oral treatments. But definitely that's one you don't want. Again, preventable with your regular parasite treatments. Again, is preventable. So that's definitely one you don't want your dog to pick up, is the kind of scabies mite. The other mite then is called Demodex. And that's a mite that actually, I suppose the main thing is we all have mites. So like we have mites in our hair, all dogs will have mites in their skin, and they're commensal, which means they're normal. So we all have a certain level of our own mites, and even there's house mites and dust mites. They're everywhere. We can't completely avoid them. But a certain level is healthy and natural, and it's part of the kind of natural skin barrier. But this Demodex mite, it can overgrow. So maybe in puppies that don't have a fully developed immune system, or in dogs that their immune system is out of whack for one reason or another, the Demodex mites then can kind of overgrow, and they can cause a problem. And they're again intensely itchy. That they do cause a lot of skin infections and irritation. So they can be there, and again, they're hard to prove that they're there. But again, very preventable by giving your treatments monthly or 4 times a year. But again, one thing to remember with the mite. So a lot of your over-the-counter treatments that you might buy in the pet shop or even in the supermarket, a lot of them are spot-ons. They will often treat. A lot of them, they're for fleas. They'll treat fleas fine. Some of them will do ticks, but I don't think a lot of them will do your mites. So, because they bury so deep into the skin, it's a particular product that you need to prevent and treat those. So I have also, just a word, I suppose, on over-the-counter treatments. I have seen a couple of dogs kind of getting skin kind of irritation and burning even from some of especially the kind of ones that you might buy on Amazon. I've seen a few people buying spot-on treatments on Amazon and they actually are burning the skin. You don't know what you're buying. So I think if you're going to go to the bother and the effort, it's effort to make sure your dog is well protected against these things. So if you're going to go to the effort, I would try and buy a reputable product that is prescribed for your dog. I would be wary of buying over-the-counter products because they probably will treat fleas as a minimum. They might prevent ticks. A lot of them won't. And I think very few of them will do your mite. So, and then they can do harm. You don't really know. I mean, if you buy them in the pet shop, they're probably not going to do harm. But if you're buying them off the internet, I'd be very, very careful. Because I've seen people even buying the flea collars and they're burning a full ring around the dog's neck. They're very dangerous. So just buy your products from a reputable vendor, and just read the back of the packet. What are you treating for and what are you preventing? Make sure you're covering fleas, ticks, and mites, and that obviously and that you're giving your dog a regular worming product as well. So I suppose to keep it simple, 4 times a year with the appropriate product. Worming is 4 times a year, definitely as a minimum. With your ectoparasites, your external parasites, you want to be treating them. It depends on the product. So some products are monthly, some products are every 3 months. And I suppose it would make it easy if you do get the one that's every 3 months, because then it's kind of, you're treating, you've 1 tablet for your worms, 1 tablet for your fleas, ticks and mites every 3 months, and then you're done. You can mark it on your calendar. It's very easy to do. We send out text messages. So a lot of vets are probably doing this as well, wherever you're based. If you want to get your dog onto a regular preventative treatment plan, your vet will send you a text message. We do this. We send a text message 4 times a year to remind owners, oh, your dog is due flea, tick and mite treatment, worm treatment, pop in and collect it, and it'll be there for them ready. And it just makes things easy. Everyone's very busy. It's very easy to forget to do this thing. So either mark it on your calendar, put a reminder in your phone, or ask your vet to send you a text message 4 times a year to remind you to do this thing. So all these things are preventable. So I think, I suppose if you have a dog, it's important that you prevent these parasites, because they're not benign. They do cause problems. They do cause skin infections, irritations, itchiness, and they can bite you as well. So important that we're preventing these things. And as I said, once you kind of get used to the idea of doing it 4 times a year, very preventable, and it's the way to go.
Fantastic, Ashleigh. That's brilliant advice. And we'll leave it there for today. And thanks once again for joining me on the Health Hub today, Ashleigh. And we'll have you back on
brilliant,
again.
Brilliant, Thank you. See you soon.
Do you have a pet in need of a vet, or do you need some health advice for your 4-legged friend? Whether it's for a regular checkup, microchipping, vaccinations, or critical urgent care, you can rest assured knowing that your pet is in loving hands at Treaty Veterinary Clinic, Limerick and Shannon. Providing care for your pet since 1986, at Treaty Vets, your pet is our priority. Call our 24-hour number 061 328 511 or make an appointment through our website www.treatyveterinaryclinic.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram, Treaty Veterinary Clinic, proud sponsors of the Health Hub on the Big Bark.
And a big thanks again to Ashleigh from Treaty Vets there for joining us today on the Big Bark. And Roxy has really woken up now. Roxy has decided she's going to start tearing up papers and tearing up everything that she can get her paws on. I suppose, given that we're talking about summer this week, one of the most important things to remember. Now, I know we haven't had a huge amount of heat this summer, but apparently we're scheduled for some hot weather this week. I'll believe it when I see it, to be honest, because it doesn't exactly seem like we're getting any sort of a summer this year. But you see it every single year. People leaving their dogs in roasting hot cars, no windows open, no water, nothing. Now, there's been plenty of vets, including our pals over at Treaty Vets, that will warn you time and time again about this. Do not leave your dogs in a hot car for any length of time, really. If it's too hot, and if you have a way not to take them, then don't take them with you in the car. Because look at how fast a car can heat up. With the windows closed, your dog can suffocate in minutes. I'm surprised that Roxy doesn't suffocate with all the paper bags and everything that she chews up, but in a hot car, you really shouldn't let your dog on their own for any length of time. Like, I'm just going to bring up here a couple of tips. Dogs in cars, summer. I'm not actually very prepared for today's show, to be honest. Okay, what is too hot for a dog in the car? God, that's American. Like, okay, here we go. Leaving a dog in a... What do you do? Okay, so what do you do if you see a dog in a hot car? Now, I have seen time and time again people saying, I'd break the window. Don't do that. For the simple reason, we will not encourage violence and, I suppose, criminal damage. I've said it myself when I see it happen. But, look, official advice is to ring the guards. And it's an emergency situation. The police can advise you what to do based on the situation. And the police could attend and actually break into the car too to gain access to dogs. Or they may advise you to do this. And if they advise you to do it, grand, you're covered. So, okay, just take pictures as well, videos of the dogs in distress, and the names and phone numbers of anyone who witnesses. Heat stroke is something that actually must maybe chat to Ashleigh or Siobhan outside the vets the next day. Heat stroke is something that is very, very, very serious, and animals locked in a car, they can suffer heat stroke in minutes. So that's even with the windows open. So if you see dogs in distress, or you are watching for the likes of collapse or tiredness, excessive panting, dribbling, really increased heart rate, your advice, if it's not in a car, if it's your own dog, maybe move them into a cool place, get them water, wet their coat with cool water, and call a vet ASAP. So there has been, over the last number of years in the UK especially, a campaign called Dogs Die in Hot Cars campaign. It's a hashtag. So as you can hear, Millie there, Roxy there has really woken up. It's getting hard with 3 dogs, so especially when she's interrupting the podcast. Roxy, come over here, Roxy. Come over here and join in. Come on. Come over here. I'm going to try and get Roxy over here. She's chewing up a box now. This is the What Did Roxy Do This Week segment. Right now, she's been bold and chewing up a box from Boots. Roxy, stop. Okay, Roxy's not going to stop. So, on that note, I think the best way to get Roxy to stop is that we move on to our next segment. And that is with Samantha Rawson from the Canine College. And Samantha's going to be talking all about, I suppose, holiday preparation. And if you're going abroad with your dog, what do you need to think of? If you're going to the UK, different, she is carrying the box over to me now. Mother of God. I definitely have to get a video of this. Anyway, here's Samantha and the Canine College while I try and calm my crazy puppy down.
Clever Canines on the Big Barrack is brought to you by the Canine College, run by champion dog trainer Samantha Rawson, a regular contributor to RTE radio and television. Samantha is a certified canine behaviour consultant, and with 30 years experience in the field, she has the knowledge and understanding to help any dog. Our services include individual dog training from basic to competition standard, assessments and behaviour consultations. The Canine College is set on 5 acres with a secure paddock and an indoor classroom. See thecaninecollege.ie or find us on Facebook for more information.
And when, you know, looking out the window, you wouldn't really think it's like summer in Ireland, but I suppose we're still here today to talk about holiday plans and maybe going abroad, whether it's summer and the sun actually is. And to do that, we're joined by Samantha Rawson from the Canine College. Samantha, thanks so much for joining us. Despite all the rain, it doesn't look like we're getting much of a summer here ourselves, are we?
No, not really. I think today was nice. I think the weekend's supposed to be a bit dicey. And then apparently next week it's to get better again. So maybe next week. Hopefully,
because we're now in August and rain. Warm rain though, so at least like it's something warm.
Warm rain, yeah.
So Samantha, okay, like today we want to look at, I suppose, especially when you look at taking a dog abroad and all the different things, and just even going on holidays in general, even in Ireland, like there's so many things that you have to prepare for. So what I want you to do is like kind of just talk us through a bit about what you have to be prepared for.
Okay, I suppose let's talk about Ireland first. So I suppose whether it's Ireland or abroad, to make sure your microchip details are up to date, make sure your dog is wearing a collar and identification disc with your phone number on it. And if you're going abroad, your international phone number on it. So it's really important to have the international code on the disc. But all dogs are required by law to wear a collar and disc. So even if they're microchipped, they must still wear a collar and disc. Safety, I suppose, is the most important thing, that if you're going somewhere new that the dog is not familiar with, I personally wouldn't let the dog off the lead unless it had a very good recall. So if I wanted to give the dog some freedom, I would put him on a long line or a retractable lead if you're in a forest or a field. The other very important thing to remember, Dara, is that when you're in a new environment, dogs are naturally curious. And you've got to be mindful that there might be livestock around, or squirrels or wild deer or anything that might take the dog's attention, and off it goes. And you don't know where you are. It's a new location, and neither does the dog. So personally, I don't think I would let a dog off in a new location unless it had a fabulous recall. The other thing to be mindful of if you're going abroad is, are your vaccinations up to date? And dogs going abroad must have a rabies vaccination. And as far as I know, rabies vaccinations need to be given at least maybe 2 months before travel. So you really need to, if you're thinking of traveling with your dog, you really need to make sure it has a rabies vaccination. And within Europe now, and because Britain is now an ex-European country, it's not in the European Union, you need a pet passport. So pet passports are obviously issued by the Department of Agriculture. So they need to be applied for well in advance. So if you're thinking of going abroad, you have to do a lot of planning. But vaccinations, your pet passport, your travel documents. And now there are new requirements between Britain and Ireland, because Britain is no longer an EU country. There are new requirements. So as far as I know, dogs have to be wormed 3 days before they arrive back in Ireland. And that worming tablet or worming vaccination has to be given by a vet in the UK. You can't just give the dog a worm tablet yourself and say, yeah, I've complied with the regulations. It has to be signed off by a vet. So maybe go on to gov.ie and have a look at their requirements, and then even have a look at the UK Department of Agriculture, which I think is... I'll have to look it up. If you just look up the Department of Agriculture website, they give the details about the British one as well. So you must give notice of your intention to travel, and you must have all your documents up to date, and you must have a rabies vaccine if you're traveling outside Ireland to Britain or the EU. So that's really important. Because you could be turned back. You could arrive down at Ashleigh Airport or wherever you're going and be turned back if you don't have your vaccinations and your documentation up to date, or vice versa. You mightn't get back into the country if your vaccinations and your documentation isn't up to standard. So just be mindful of that. I suppose the other thing to be aware of from the dog's point of view is consistency of their bed. So it's really important to, maybe if a dog is crate trained or if it has its own bed, that you bring the dog's bed with you. So there must be consistency between your home and the place you're traveling. So that's really important. So consistency of kind of the home environment. And also think about, if your dog is not used to being left in a room by himself, and maybe you're renting a house somewhere or you're staying in somebody else's house, is the dog going to be able to sleep in the bedroom with you? If not, is he trained or has he been taught how to cope in a room by himself? So an awful lot of people will bring dogs on holidays with them because the dog sleeps in the bedroom with them and they can't really leave them in kennels, or they have some kind of separation issues. But think about the practicalities. Are you going to be able to bring that dog everywhere with you? Or at some stage, must he be left in a room by himself, or even in the car by himself? So that's why crates are a really good idea. If you can get your dog used to being crate trained, or even behind a baby gate, You can bring a crate with you on holidays, or you can even bring a baby gate with you on holidays that you could use in some kind of rented accommodation. So that's really, really important.
And Samantha, I suppose, like, what about, like, when you look at nowadays, you see, like, the Sten line advertising, I suppose, pet-friendly cabins as well.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Especially, like, travel abroad, you'd be looking at what's the best way to travel. I suppose ferry, if you have a dog, is probably the best way, because, like, flights for a dog, you obviously have to have a day ahead and everything as well.
Yeah, my personal preference is to have a long ferry ride and a short drive. That's my personal preference. Because a dog stuck in a car for a long time, they can get sick. And, you know, then you have to think about, where am I going to pull in to let them out for a wee? So I prefer dogs to have a long ferry ride so that they sleep. So my dogs are trained to kind of sleep on a ferry, because my dogs stay in the van. Personally, my dogs stay in the van and they sleep in the van. And then when we get off, I have it all planned where I know where the local park is. So the minute we get off the boat, we're straight into the local park. They get walked for an hour or so, and then they're back in the car. And I try and make the car journey as short as possible. But that's down to personal preference. But again, if you were thinking of maybe doing a long haul, I would see if you could even bring the dogs to the UK for the weekend, or bring them, you know, in Ireland for a weekend, and almost kind of do a dummy run to see how you get on. I certainly wouldn't bring a dog abroad if my dog couldn't go on holidays, maybe down to Kerry for a couple of days. So do a dry run at home before you go abroad, because obviously going abroad, it's a lot more complicated. The other thing about going abroad is check out where your nearest vet is, because as I say, you'll need your worming and your vaccinations up to date. So you need to know where the nearest vet is to your location, to wherever you're staying. And I think that goes kind of for safety anyway, because God forbid the dog gets sick, or one of my dogs got an eye infection when I was over in the UK. And I knew where the local vet was, and we got sorted. So it's really important that you have some kind of veterinary service wherever you are staying. God forbid there is an emergency.
Absolutely. I suppose another thing you have to look at as well is, like, is your dog, like, you have to look at the age of your dog too. Is your dog physically able to actually go on the trip as well? That's a really good point, Dara, because sometimes we think of what we want. We're not thinking, what does the dog want?
So again, like, one of my dogs is 13. Now, there's no way I'm going to put her in a van and ask her to go on a long journey or on a boat journey. So, you know, I wouldn't be bringing her on holidays. So I'd only be bringing a fit dog on holidays. And if your dog has any kind of, history of stress or trauma, or it's a new rescue dog, or it's just had surgery, or it's been ill, I wouldn't be bringing a dog like that on holidays. I would only be bringing a fit, healthy dog that's happy, that is going to be happy in whatever constraints they're going to have to tolerate for that duration. So, and you have to prepare them. You can't just suddenly decide, off we go and, we'll bring the dog. You have to prepare the dog for the situation, and also not to expect the dog to do anything that it hasn't already been trained for. So many years ago, I got a phone call from a man whose dog had kind of, barked at somebody while he was sitting outside a coffee shop on holidays. And I said to him, well, have you ever sat in a coffee shop at home? Have you ever brought the dog for coffee when you're at home? And he went, God, no, why would I do that? And I said, well, why would you suddenly expect a dog to sit quietly outside a coffee shop on holidays if you've never asked it to do exactly the same at home? So my point is, he hadn't prepared the dog, and yet he expected the dog to behave in some, angelic fashion that he'd never expected before.
Yeah, that's very true. Like, if you don't expect your dog to behave a certain way when you're at home, like, why would you expect them to behave the same way when you're abroad? I suppose, Samantha, the one other thing that I want to kind of bring up is, like, traditionally down through the years, Ireland has not been, I suppose, like, if you're holidaying abroad in Ireland, hasn't been the most dog-friendly place. When you look at, like, France and other countries in the EU, they're a lot more dog-friendly. So, if you're choosing a location abroad, what would be your recommendation in relation to that?
Well, I suppose the thing, France has a great reputation of being very accommodating towards dogs, and so does Germany and Holland as well. But the thing that I have noticed about dogs abroad is their owners don't expect other people to interact with them. So they literally go to the restaurant and lie under the table and are used to being ignored. So it's really important for dogs to learn to be ignored. So the idea is that your dog just lies under the table, maybe the waitress will give your dog a bowl of water or whatever, but that it's not jumping to say hello to everybody that walks past the table. It just knows, you maybe give it a bed or give it a mat, and it knows you lie there and you stay still for the duration of the meal. Now, most Irish dogs are not trained to that standard. So that's my point. You've got to prepare the dog for the eventuality. So if your dog can't kind of lie at your feet for, 10 minutes or 20 minutes and build up to an hour or so, then I wouldn't try and bring that dog to a restaurant or to sit outside a coffee shop in Spain if it can't sit at home under your kitchen table at home for 20 minutes. You're just going to get yourself and the dog into an awful lot of unnecessary stress. So think, is your dog capable of doing what you're going to want it to do on holidays? And if it's not capable of doing it, well, then maybe leave the dog at home. Maybe it's not going to work.
Or maybe even get them used to doing that before you go here.
Yeah. And the lead-in period for that, Dara, if you're trying to train a dog to do anything, the lead-in period is about 8 weeks. And maybe you could cut that down to 6 weeks or 4 weeks if you're a really good trainer and you have a great dog and you're going to do, 3 or 4 training sessions a day. But, to your average dog, to train them to do something new, with that level of distraction, it's not about whether the dog can do it or not, because if the dog can do it at home, great. But it's about the level of distractions. And when you bring a dog into a new environment, it's going to be distracted. So it's whether it can cope with people passing by, with children passing by, with people dropping food, all that kind of stuff. So be realistic about what your dog is actually capable of.
Absolutely. And okay, Samantha, I think we'll leave it there for today. Some very good tips there for anyone who's looking to take their dog, whether be in Ireland or abroad. Just, I suppose, remember, to make sure that you have your dog, used to the situation before you go away.
Yeah, and maybe check in with whatever establishment you are staying at to check in what their rules are around dogs and what their criteria is or what's acceptable or not acceptable. So check before you go. Check in what the rules are.
Fantastic, Samantha. And listen, Samantha, thanks ever so much again, Samantha Rawson from the Canine College, for joining me today on The Big Back. I managed to get Roxy to calm down, and here she is right next to me again now. Are you going to back? Are you going to say hello to everybody? No, you're not. Okay, you're not. You're gone tired again after all your hyping us there for a few minutes. And while that segment was running there with Samantha, another one that we recorded earlier, by the way, just to let you know, most of our segments are recorded at different times just to suit our guests. And if you do want to be a guest on our show, we can definitely arrange a time over Zoom or face-to-face or whatever you want to do, whatever way you want to record. We can definitely arrange a very easy way and way that suits you to be on the show. So great advice there from Samantha, all about, especially if you're taking it out to the UK, remembering some pet passports, vaccinations, anything like that. And if you're going abroad, and when you're coming back, just to remember that you have to get your dog vaccinated before you come back too. So, yeah, it's been a real, I suppose, summer episode. And I suppose while that was on, Roxy wanted to go and do her poopies, which is actually very appropriate to talk about, because today our show is actually sponsored by our good friends over at Mutt Mitts Ireland. And Mutt Mitts Ireland aren't just a dog bag, they're a mutt mitt. So, very easy to use, very hygienic. You put your hand into the bag and it forms a mitt at the bottom of the bag. The products are really, really, I suppose, fantastic. I've been using them for years, and they come in. I'm not sure if Kieran over at Mutt Mitts still does the pink bags. He used to do pink bags. Funny feeling they could be gone. But the packets do come in 200 packs, and he also does a lot of commercial products. You might have seen his stuff around. You might have seen his bags in, depending on what county you're in. A lot of councils do use them, and I live by these bags for the simple reason they're very hygienic. I have not got any sort of dog shite on my hand since I started using them. So keep an eye out for mutt mitts, and if you want to order your mutt mitts, please remember to go to muttmittsireland.ie. Even order, see if you do one order, and you'll probably go back again. I guarantee you'll go back again. But yeah, that is Mutt Mitts Ireland, our sponsors for this week, and Mutt Mitts better than a bag. So that's pretty much all we have time for today. Like I said, a nice short show today. So I think at this point now, I need to go take Roxy, Bruno and Millie off for the walk, because she's getting very, very, very hyper. And she's going absolutely cray-cray. And Roxy! Yeah, Roxy! Ruff! Ruff! She's, as you can hear, Roxy's now growling at me. And Millie has arrived. Millie has arrived over to say hello to me. Well, look, I think I'll leave it at that for today, because we have a crazy doggy, and now there's a lot of noise being made in the background here, so it's going to get hard to hear me shortly. Millie's tail is absolutely battering my Zoom recording console here, so I also think that's going to probably go flying in the next 5 minutes. But and that we have for this week, and I'd like to thank my guests Samantha and Ashleigh for being on, for all the great advice that they gave today, and we will have them both back again next week as well. And next week we'll be talking a bit about, I suppose, arthritis in dogs, and we'll be talking about behaviour, puppy behaviour in particular, because this one right here next to me is lovely little puppy Roxy, who pretends that she's the best doggy in the world, but my God, she's hard work. Say this every week that she's hard work, but we love her. We do love her. But we'll be talking about puppy behaviour in general. And if you have any questions that you want asked to either Samantha or Ashleigh, do let us know. We'll be more than happy to get those questions in front of them. And, well, as always, that's pretty much the end of the show for today. And thank you to Roxy for not destroying the house while I was recording. Thank you for Millie for not knocking over my console when she was wagging her tail like crazy 5 minutes ago. And Bruno for always being the best boy. And, like I said, thanks to our guests as well. If you want to find out more about The Big Bark, go over to thebigbark.ie. We have a brand new website launched, so you'll find everything that you need to know there. Nice, fast website too. Loads very, very quickly. And great to see it loading so quickly. Hosted on a great platform as well. So it's really a really good website. Also, you probably don't give a crap about like websites or something. So it's also, let's see, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on TikTok, we're on Patreon. So get on over, you'll find us at the Big Bark Podcast on most of those, and get on over, you'll find lots of behind the scenes videos on TikTok especially, with Roxy being an absolute little scoundrel of a rogue, and Millie doing some crazy things like barking at donkeys, and Bruno, well, I think I have one of Bruno knocking me over, so yeah, there's lots of behind the scenes stuff that happens there. And that's it for today. Thanks again to our sponsors as well, Mutt Mitts Ireland, Better Than a Bag, and great to have them behind us on the show. And if you are interested in sponsoring any of our episodes, it helps to pay for the coffee. I really, really need to put up with Roxy, and only messing Roxy. But it does help to fund the show and keep the show going, because there are costs involved, and this is all voluntary. But yeah, that is it. And listen, we're the Big Bark Podcast, bringing all the canine news to you, and we'll see you next week.
It's the Big Bark with the latest of the canines. The Big Bark, all the doggiest of headlines with your hosts Dara, Millie, Roxy and Bruno. They're the kind of dogs that you know.
It's time to talk about health, nutrition, training, talk with canine professionals, owners and dogs.
It's the big